My mother rarely texts me, but yesterday there was a message from her. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw it. Family meeting, 7 p.m., mandatory attendance. No greeting, no check-in, just a command. Like I was an employee in their company, not their daughter. I stood in front of the house I had grown up in, my hand hovering over the intricately carved brass doorbell. I knew that behind this door, nothing was waiting for me except disappointment and judgment. A sleek Mercedes sat in the driveway. A bitter reminder that in the Sinclair family, success was measured by prestige, an Ivy League degree, and bank account figures. And me? I had chosen a different path. One they had never understood and never wanted to. The door swung open before I could knock. "You're late," my mother said, lips pressed so tightly together that I thought, if she loosened them, another reprimand would spill out. I glanced at my watch. 6:58. In this family, even being on time meant I was late. As I stepped into the living room, the tension was immediate. Rebecca, my eldest sister, sat upright on the couch, her lawyer's briefcase neatly placed at her feet. Daniel, the youngest, a successful entrepreneur, remained glued to his phone as if I didn't exist. Lucas, my older brother, was still in his doctor's scrubs, arms crossed, his gaze filled with quiet disapproval. My father stood near the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back, his expression as rigid as a general about to deliver a verdict. "Sit down, Savannah." I glanced at the single chair positioned directly across from all of them. They sat together. I was isolated. An outsider. Slowly I sat down, my back straight, my gaze unwavering. "What is this about?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Rebecca opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "We've discussed the future of the family's public image," she said, her tone as cold as if she were arguing a case in court. "And we've come to a necessary decision. A decision in the best interest of maintaining the family's professional legacy, dating back to your grandparents," my mother added, sitting close to Lucas as if seeking his silent approval. I picked up the document, scanning the dense lines of text. I didn't need to read carefully to catch the key phrases. Termination of family relations. Forfeiture of inheritance rights. Severance of all financial ties. A dry laugh escaped me, breaking the heavy silence. "You're disowning me." I looked at each of them, daring them to deny it. "This isn't personal," Daniel finally spoke, his voice indifferent. "It's just business. It wouldn't be ideal if my associates found out I had a sister working in that kind of profession." "Business?" I raised an eyebrow. "I'm your sister, how is this not personal?" My father sighed, shaking his head. "Your lifestyle reflects poorly on this family. That so-called job of yours is a business," I cut in. "Is a joke," Lucas interjected. "Everyone at the hospital knows I have a sister who makes cheap crafts. That does nothing for my reputation." My fingers tightened around the stack of papers. I had grown used to their judgment, their disappointed sighs. But I had never expected them to actually cut me out. My mother spoke, her tone softer, but laced with the same underlying contempt. "We gave you every opportunity, the best schools, connections, support. But you threw it all away to play with glue and paint?" I took a deep breath, forcing down the anger rising in my chest. "Where do I sign?" My mother blinked, as if she had expected rage or begging, but not indifference. "Savannah, if you reconsider," I asked, "where do I sign?" Rebecca hesitated, then pointed to the bottom of the page. 10 minutes later, it was done. As I set the pen down, an eerie lightness filled my chest, the feeling of breaking the last chain that had bound me. "I hope you understand," my father said as I stood up. "This is what's best for the family, for our image." I paused at the door, turning to look at them one last time. "The funny thing is, you've always been afraid that I would tarnish the family's name. But not one of you ever actually knew what I've built. Or what I will become." My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "You chose to cut me off, now live with that choice." The door clicked shut behind me, too softly for the weight of what had just happened. I stepped into the cool night air, taking a deep breath. I was sad, but I couldn't say it out loud. I got into my car, my hands trembling as I wiped away the tears that had already fallen. The family I had loved, had fought to be a part of, had abandoned me. But I would show them. I would prove them wrong. 3 days later, I sat in my workshop, slowly stirring the glossy finish on a wooden sculpture made from reclaimed materials. I had worked through the night to complete it, not because of a deadline, but because I didn't want to think. They really did that to you? Lena's voice, my best friend and long-time business partner, pulled me from my daze. She set a cup of coffee on the table, her brown eyes burning with outrage. Not only did they disown me, but they made sure I had no financial ties left with them, I said, my voice eerily calm. And you just signed without a fight? Lena gaped. I shrugged. What was there to fight for? If they were so eager to cut me off, then I had no reason to stay, tied to that cold, lifeless house. Lena shook her head, about to say something, when the workshop door burst open. Ethan, my business partner, stormed in like a whirlwind, his laptop clutched tightly in his arms. Savannah, you need to see this, now. Another order issue? No, a huge opportunity. Ethan set the laptop on the table, spinning the screen toward me. On the homepage of Living in Style, a headline blazed across the screen. The young artist transforming sustainable interior design. Meet Savannah Sinclair. I blinked, unable to believe what I was seeing. Did they just publicly call me an artist? Lena practically screamed in excitement. Not just that, you're also recognized as a pioneer in the recycled interior design movement. Ethan tapped his fingers on the table. That's not all. Do you know who shared this article? I shook my head. Business Forward. I froze. The top business magazine? Exactly, and they want you on the cover of their next issue. I looked at Ethan, then back at the screen. My heart pounded. I had always believed in my work, but I never imagined it would gain this level of recognition. Are you going to do it? Lena asked, hope shining in her eyes. I took a deep breath. Of course. The article about me spread like wildfire. Within a month, my workshop's revenue skyrocketed 50-fold. Orders flooded in from everywhere, even internationally, from small boutique stores to high-end luxury brands. A prestigious recycled furniture chain reached out, wanting to collaborate on an exclusive collection. My company had transformed overnight in ways I never could have imagined. I was constantly meeting clients, signing contracts, and expanding my business. I had truly built something of my own, a growing empire. And then, my phone started buzzing with names I never expected to see. Dad. I stared at the screen. His message was brief. Call me. I didn't reply. A moment later, my phone vibrated again. Rebecca. We need to talk. Call me when you have time. I scoffed. When they signed the papers to cut me off, did any of them think this day would come? Another message? Lucas. I read the article. Congratulations. Mom and Dad want to see you. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I checked my schedule. Tomorrow morning, I had a cover shoot for Business Forward. After that, I was meeting with a well-known TV producer who had invited me to The Today Show to talk about my journey. My family could wait. Because this time, I was the one in control. I always knew this day would come. With my relentless hard work, it was inevitable. 3 days after my Business Forward interview was published, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. First, a message from Rebecca. We need to talk, it's urgent, call me as soon as possible. I didn't respond. Then, from Lucas. Savannah, Mom and Dad want to see you, they said it's a family matter. A family matter. How ironic. When they signed me out of their lives, did they consider me family, then? I put my phone down and went back to work. But, less than an hour later, it rang again. Dad. This time, I slowly picked it up and read the message. Dinner at home. 7 p.m. on Sunday, the whole family will be there. We need to talk, sweetheart. No greeting, No small talk. Just another command. Like I was still their obedient daughter. But this time, my father had called me sweetheart. I set my phone down, thinking for a moment. Then, I typed a short reply. Okay. I didn't arrive early. This time, I made sure to show up exactly at 7 p.m. As I stepped onto the front porch, I noticed that nothing had changed. The same familiar Mercedes parked in the driveway, the perfectly trimmed hedges, the spotless white paint. A picture of success they had always worshipped. I raised my hand to ring the doorbell, but the door opened before I could touch it. My mother stood there, her eyes slightly puffy as if she had been crying, but her voice remained composed. "Savannah, you're here." Her greeting felt strange. I didn't respond. I just walked inside. The living room was eerily silent. Rebecca, Lucas, Daniel and my father were all seated, just like the day they cast me out. But this time, there was no disdain, no judgment. My father cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Everyone sit down, we have something to discuss." I glanced around, then slowly took my seat. This time I was no longer the weak one. I was far more confident. "Why am I here?" I asked, crossing my arms. Rebecca was the first to speak. "My company is in trouble." I wasn't surprised. "The car company?" I scoffed. "It was doing fine when I left, wasn't it?" Lucas shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "We're having issues with our loans. The auto industry is changing and we're falling behind." "So what do you want from me?" I asked bluntly. My father slowly placed his hands on the table, his expression serious. "We want to partner with you, Savannah." Silence filled the room. I looked at each face in front of me, masking my amusement. So they had finally realized my worth. But I hadn't come here to help them on their terms. Leaning back, I let a small smile play on my lips. "All right, let's talk conditions." I agreed to meet them, but on my terms. If they wanted to discuss business, we would negotiate like strangers. We would meet at a restaurant, my choice, and they would arrive on time. I chose the Langston, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, the same place my family used to brag about being regulars. But times had changed. Now I was the VIP. I arrived exactly on time, no earlier, no later. As I stepped inside, the staff immediately recognized me. "Good evening, Miss Savannah," the manager greeted me with a warm smile. "Your table is ready. The chef has also prepared a special menu for you tonight." I nodded in acknowledgement and followed him to the private dining room. My family was already there. My mother sat stiffly, clutching her napkin. Rebecca maintained a professional demeanor, as if preparing for a courtroom argument. Lucas had his arms crossed, trying to look confident. Daniel kept his eyes on his phone, but this time, I could see the tension on his face. And my father, the man who always prided himself on being the strong pillar of the family, was looking at me differently now. No furrowed brows, no harsh scowls. I pulled out my chair and sat down slowly. "So," I said, lifting my wine glass, "what do you want?" My father exhaled deeply, breaking the silence. "The company is in crisis, Savannah. The bank has pulled our loans. We have less than 60 days to pay or lose everything. The auto industry is changing too fast," Lucas added. "We haven't kept up. No one wants to invest in an outdated family business anymore." "But you can change that," my mother chimed in, her voice softer. "Your image, your reputation." I let out a quiet laugh. "My reputation?" I tilted my head. "You mean the same reputation you called shameful a year ago?" No one spoke. I set my wine glass down and folded my arms. "You don't want me," I said, calmly but sharply. "You want what I can bring you." Rebecca sighed and pulled out a file. "Savannah, we're all adults, this is business. Yes, we made mistakes, but we need to save this company and we need a new direction. If we partner." "Partner?" I let out a dry chuckle. "You didn't partner with me when you threw me out of your lives, but now, when the company needs saving, suddenly I'm a valuable business associate?" My father gritted his teeth. You don't have to do this, Savannah. Do what, Dad? I tilted my head. Live by my values? Stand by what I believe in? You always told me never to let anyone take advantage of me. Well, if this is me doing this, then congratulations. I'm following your advice. The air in the room grew heavy. A waiter stepped in, quietly placing the appetizers on the table. No one touched the food. After a long silence, my mother placed her hands on the table, looking at me with pleading eyes. You're the only one who can help us. I stared at her for a long moment. Then, I stood up. I used to value family, I said slowly. If, back then, you had simply supported me, I wouldn't hesitate to help you now. But you made one thing very clear. I'm not part of this family anymore. Because my career, my lowly job, was a disgrace to you. I picked up my bag and turned to leave. Savannah! My father's voice called after me, laced with impatience. Name your price. Whatever it is, we can negotiate. I stopped, glancing back at them one last time. You're mistaken, Dad, I said, a faint smile on my lips. My price isn't money. It's trust. And you can't afford it anymore. You threw it away a year ago. Then I walked out of the room, leaving them with their untouched meals and the bitter truth they had never wanted to hear. As I exited the restaurant, I felt lighter than ever. 3 months ago they pushed me out of their lives. Now, as everything crumbled, they wanted me back. Like nothing had ever happened. I said no. And I didn't regret it. But life has a funny way of playing its own games. Not even 2 days later, another door opened. One I had never dared to dream of. You need to sit down, right now. Ethan burst into the workshop, his face beaming with excitement. I glanced up from my workbench, where I was carefully arranging stained glass pieces for a new project. What's going on? I muttered, but Ethan was already rushing forward. No, Savannah, you really need to see this right now. He set his laptop down in front of me, the screen displaying an email from a name I never expected to see. The Museum of Modern Art. MoMA. I froze. They want my work? Not just that, Ethan gasped. They want you as the featured artist in their upcoming sustainable art exhibition. This isn't just a big opportunity, Savannah. This is the pinnacle. I sat there, staring at the screen, my mind spinning. MoMA, one of the most prestigious museums in the world. If I accepted, my work wouldn't just be featured in fashion magazines or high-end showrooms. It would become art. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. I slowly leaned back in my chair, feeling the heavy thump of my heartbeat in my chest. But when one door opens, the past always finds a way to knock. Just a day later, a message from Lucas appeared on my phone. Mom has been crying a lot. Dad too. Can you come see them? I didn't respond. A few hours later, Rebecca sent a long email. Her words weren't as sharp as usual. There was a rare hint of sincerity. Savannah, I know we were wrong, we acted like fools, but please, think about Mom. She really needs you. I turned off my phone, telling myself I wouldn't let emotions sway me. But that afternoon, something changed everything. A letter arrived, something I had never received from my father before. Slowly, I opened the envelope and recognized the strong, familiar handwriting. Savannah. I've written this letter dozens of times, but there is no way to make it perfect, no way to justify what I've done. I was wrong. About everything. You have always been the strongest one in this family, not because of your success or fame, but because you had the courage to choose your own path, despite everything. It took me too long to realize that. And maybe, I don't deserve to have you back. But if you can give me a chance to make things right, I would be grateful. Love. Dead. I clenched the letter in my hands, feeling something I had never felt toward my father before. Authenticity. I spent the entire night thinking. I wasn't the girl who needed my family's approval anymore, but if I were to help them, it would be on my terms. So the next morning, I sent a single message to my father. We will have a short conversation, but this time, on my conditions. The family meeting took place in a hospital room. A setting none of us had ever imagined would be the backdrop for such a pivotal moment. My mother had been admitted due to stress and exhaustion. According to the doctor, rest was what she needed most. But even from her hospital bed she gripped my hand, tears sliding down her face. "You came," she whispered, her voice hoarse with fatigue. I nodded but said nothing. The others sat around a small conference table outside her room. My father, Rebecca, Lucas, and Daniel, all waiting for my decision. I opened my briefcase and placed a stack of papers on the table. "If I help you, these are my terms." I looked at each of them. No one objected. They knew they had no room to negotiate. I tapped the documents with my pen. Sinclair Auto will cease to exist. It will be rebranded as Sinclair Electric. A sustainable electric car brand incorporating recycled art into its design and showrooms. Lucas raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" I met his gaze. "The world is changing, Lucas. You were too slow to adapt. If this company wants to survive, it has to become something entirely new. And I'm the one who will make that happen." I pointed to the first line of the contract. "I will be CEO. I will hold 51% ownership and have full executive control. None of you will have the authority to interfere." Rebecca frowned. "But no buts," I cut her off. "Dad will hold the title of honorary advisor, but he will have no decision-making power. And the rest of you," I glanced at Lucas, Rebecca, and Daniel, "will only have shares based on actual contributions. No one gets privileges just because they're family." My father was silent for a long time. Then finally, he nodded. "That's fair." I raised an eyebrow, surprised at how quickly he accepted. Then I realized he had no other choice. "On last condition," I continued, looking at each of them. "If we do this, then the past ends here. No one gets to call me the disgraceful child, or the family betrayer anymore. If you want my help, then you acknowledge that I was never the problem. You were." Silence filled the room. My mother's eyes welled with fresh tears. My father sat deep in thought. The first to break the silence was Rebecca. "You're right," she sighed. "We were wrong." Lucas lowered his head. "I was too arrogant to see what you were doing. But now, I understand." Daniel gave a small nod, no longer wearing his usual indifference. Finally, my father reached for the contract. "Hand me the pen." I looked at him, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes, but also acceptance. I passed him the pen, and one by one, my family signed the agreement they never thought would happen. And at that moment, I knew I truly held the power in the very family that once cast me out. 1 year later, I walked through the towering glass doors of Sinclair Electric, now one of the fastest-growing sustainable electric vehicle brands in the country. The showroom lights reflected off the latest car models. The company didn't just survive, it thrived. We had secured a major partnership with one of the largest battery manufacturers, giving Sinclair electric vehicles a range that outperformed the competition. Our showrooms weren't just places to buy cars. They were immersive art spaces, showcasing the intersection of technology and creativity. Everything operated exactly as I had envisioned. And my family had finally found their rightful places. Rebecca left her high-stress legal career to become the company's chief legal officer, a role where she felt useful without drowning in endless lawsuits. Lucas, the same person who once mocked my work, now led the development of an electric medical vehicle fleet, ensuring hospitals had environmentally friendly transportation. Daniel, the one who never cared about anything, was now heading research and development, using technology to optimize vehicle efficiency. My father remained an honorary advisor, but he no longer made the decisions. For the first time in our lives, we were actually working together. That evening we gathered at my art studio, the place where everything began. On the table sat a small box. Inside it were the very papers that had once ruined me. I picked up one, a copy of the family disownment agreement, the document they forced me to sign a year ago. "What do we do with it?" Lucas asked, his voice more serious than I had ever heard. I reached for a lighter. We burn it. No one objected. One by one we tossed the papers into the kiln, letting them turn to ash. A declaration that the past would never return. As the embers cooled, I gathered the ashes into a small dish and carried them to the glass furnace. Now, let's turn it into something beautiful. I took a molten glass rod, dipped it into the ashes, and began shaping. Under my hands, a new sculpture was born, a small abstract piece representing a family. Not perfect, not symmetrical, but real and strong. My mother placed a hand over her heart, tears streaming down her face. "It's beautiful, Savannah." I nodded, feeling lighter than ever. It wasn't just a sculpture, it was a symbol of our rebirth. I placed it at the center of Sinclair Electric's main showroom. It stood there, illuminated by LED lights, a reminder that sometimes what is broken can be reshaped into something even more beautiful. And this time I was in full control of my future and the company that once rejected me. The grand opening of Sinclair Electric's third branch. The launch was more spectacular than anything I had ever imagined. What was once an outdated family car company had now become a symbol of innovation and sustainability, attracting not just eco-conscious customers but some of the biggest investors in the industry. Our new showroom was an open-concept space where technology and art intertwined. Sleek electric vehicles stood beside handcrafted sculptures made from recycled materials. A massive glass wall reflected the light from chandeliers, constructed from the salvaged metal of old car models, creating an atmosphere that was both modern and soulful. The showroom was packed. Journalists, business leaders, and even those who once doubted Sinclair Auto's future now stood before me, marveling at its transformation. I stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand, looking out at the crowd, and more importantly, at my family, standing in the front row. "A year ago, no one believed this company could survive," I said, my voice carrying through the grand space. "But today, we're not just surviving, we're redefining the industry, and it's all because we had the courage to embrace change." My eyes met my father's, the same man who once dismissed me as a failure. He gave me a small nod, not the rigid approval of a traditional businessman, but something far more meaningful. "Pride," I continued. "I want to thank everyone who believed in this vision, my team, our investors, and my family. Yes, we've made mistakes, but we've learned that sometimes what matters most is not where you started, but where you choose to go." A wave of applause erupted. And I knew I had done it. The post-hunt party took place in the courtyard of the showroom, with twinkling lights reflecting off the glass surfaces of the new electric car models. I stood by the bar sipping my wine as Rebecca approached. "This time you really won," she said, a small smile forming on her lips. "It's not about winning," I shook my head, glancing toward the showroom, where Lucas was presenting the new medical vehicle line, while Daniel discussed battery technology with a group of young engineers. "This time we got it right." As the night came to an end, my family gathered beneath the glass family sculpture, the piece I had created from the ashes of the disownment papers. My father lightly touched the sculpture, his gaze distant. "It took me years to understand your true worth," he said, his voice quiet. "But now I know. You never had to prove anything to me. I was the one who needed to prove myself to you." I gave him a soft smile. "You already have." For the first time, I felt truly at peace. I had my family, but this time, it was on my terms. And for the first time in my life, I knew that I wasn't just building a company, I was building a legacy. Savannah's story is not just about creating a business empire, it's a powerful lesson in self-worth, forgiveness, and the strength of reinvention. She was cast aside by her family, but instead of breaking, she turned her pain into fuel for success. In reality, many people have been underestimated, rejected for not following the traditional path, but true success doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from staying true to yourself. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't resentment. It's living a life you are proud of. Savannah's journey is a testament to the power of resilience and independence. What do you think of her story? If it were you, would you forgive and help your family after everything? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more gripping and inspiring stories about family and life.